this is Kieran and welcome to the 9016 podcast. Thank you guys all so much for joining me for my first episode. Let me just tell you a wee bit about the premise of the show. Basically, the idea was to get other artists and musicians in to talk about their process and things like that, but I'm not going to be limited to that. We're going to be open to a wide range of guests to give you a broad spectrum of content. For my first episode, I brought on a very close friend of mine. We go way back to our high school days. He's a talented musician and we have a great dynamic. I thought it was the perfect first guest, so please welcome my friend Liam Dell.
Home Audio Entertainment.
9016 Radio.
The show for artists of all kinds.
Sit down, relax, enjoy the music.
It's like every country song.
But like, my point is more like, yes, that is the context of those songs. Like, there's stereotypes within the genres, but like in rock and roll music, people that literally say rock and roll, like the true essence of rock and roll, in the middle of the songs, they're talking about rock and roll.
Yeah.
It's just like a really corny thing to me, and I think that's why I hate it so much. Whereas hip hop, you don't really hear anyone saying like.
But that's because I feel like you're always imitating the trendsetter. So I feel like that root in rock and roll comes from everyone wanted to be Elvis.
Yeah.
So they had to emphasize how rock and roll they were because Elvis had like so many elements that just made him a pimp on his own that everyone else is like, well, I'm just some nerdy, Tom Petty's like, I'm just some nerdy blonde-haired skinny dude from Florida. Like I need to emphasize that I can rock or people won't believe
my
me.
personality out
Yeah.
there. Oh, funny. I was watching something recently about Elvis that kind of made me laugh. It was during Bill Burr's stand-up. The fact that he had to be like the first person to, like he was one of the first celebrities, so he got sort of hit with all of these things that celebrities have to deal with, but he was one of the first, like he was one of the first celebrities on TV, so he had one of the more broader audiences and like one of the first few problems to deal with, so like the dealing with like drug addiction and all that sort of stuff. I thought that was quite funny how that sort of defined his personality.
I think
Elvis.
His problem was probably that people were calling him the king, like straight away.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if somebody's calling you, if just a regular
way too
person, people you hang out with is calling you the king, you're like, oh, fuck. These guys just can't see me as
now I've got
Elvis.
to
Like, you know, like now I can't be chill at any point around these guys because now they will think I'm a king of some kind. Same thing happens to Michael Jackson, you know?
Yeah,
And
there's
then-
too much pressure.
That's why they always end up buying their own places to live, like Neverland Ranch or Graceland for Elvis, because they're like, well, now you put me on a pedestal, I have to live on this pedestal, and now I need to live away from you because Elvis couldn't just walk down the street.
No.
Imagine that.
I think in the case of Elvis, that was pure like, again, he had more recognition through television, grew a wider audience, so it was easy to put that sort of name on him. Whereas do you think with Michael Jackson it was more, he was just raw talent and they just gave him that title because of how he performed rather than like he was the first of many to do that
I don't know. He was the first like child star that became an adult star at the same magnitude that he was also a child star, you know?
Yeah.
Because most child stars within music are like, they have to push through this mature image or whatever to make them, so, you know, they become more sexualized or whatever, so people are like, oh, it's not a kid anymore. Whereas Michael Jackson was like, they were following, he was never going to lose the fan base because he started when he was 8 and he's the lead singer of this band when he's 8.
Yeah.
And then he was still making music. He was about to go on tour when he was 50 when he died, you know.
So he had an audience that sort of grew up with him as well.
Throughout his entire
People,
life, you know. Elvis was like, you know, when he first got on television, he would have been like 23 or whatever.
Which is still pretty young. But
Still enough to like have lived your adolescence without people fawning all over you.
Yeah. That would be why Justin Bieber's so massive
up.
as well, because people, well, that too, but more how he gained popularity because he was such a young star and he's got that adorable persona, all this, you know, aspect about him that people enjoy, and you grow up as he grows up, you're sort of with him all the way. So even later on down the track, you still know Justin Bieber for what he is and what he was.
But then there's still other guys. You could say like Frank Sinatra was one of the first like radio superstars because you get him on record and he was on every radio station and it was like Beatlemania for Frank Sinatra. You speak to anybody, not as many people are alive anymore, but like you speak to older people when we were younger, and Frank Sinatra is like the Elvis Presley of old people, you know, like
I'm not too familiar with him
girls
as a whole.
frothed Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, was it just to do with his voice? I never thought he was a very good looking guy.
Nah, he's not conventionally good looking guy. He had a big old scar up the side of his neck.
Oh, really?
And his under his cheek. So if you watch some of his old movies, they put like cake makeup on, but like you can see it. It runs right down his neck and right across his jaw.
Do you
Because
know
when
where it was from?
he was a massive baby, he was a really, really big baby, like huge, like he was 16 pounds, like
Jesus.
freaking huge baby.
Yeah.
And they pulled like they used forceps to pull him out, and it like grabbed him because you know your face is real malleable.
Yeah.
Like grabbed him and like cut a big scar down his face. I think.
Jeez. Fucking hell.
Apparently he had a schlong so big that he had to have custom pants made. Yeah, he had to have like a little holster built inside of his pants because his dong was so, Not even like, that's not even like an urban myth. It's not like a legend that someone's like, oh man, I bet Elvis had a huge, Sinatra had a huge dong. It was like, no, his tailor came out, it's like, I have to custom make pants for this dude because his dong was just too visible in these other pants.
That would be incredibly uncomfortable having that hanging down the side of your leg.
For sure.
So what did they do to the? Would you say
I
they
don't
do
know.
the
I
pants?
guess they would have
Like,
built like a base on the
Fucking
inside of the pants because back then, like, you know, this is the 40s and the 30s. Like, you couldn't have some dude schlong just hanging out in his pants.
And I suppose their pants wouldn't be riding. They'd be riding pretty light.
Yeah.
You can tell my pants are going to be right up there.
Yeah.
But still, again, you tuck it in behind.
Oh, it would have been uncomfortable as hell. Having a large dong all the time would
Depends
be
how
uncomfortable a lot
large
of
we're
ways. Yeah, I think it was pretty decent. I think we're talking like like a pretty large dong. I think Sinatra was a show and
Gifted
not a
in
grower.
many ways. Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get the appeal, the style of singing, that sort of thing. But like, how did he do career wise? Like, was he quite a long running? Like, did he have a long career?
Oh, heck yeah. He performed pretty much like right up until he died almost. I'd say he's probably still one of the biggest selling artists of all time. I'd be surprised if he wasn't.
Makes sense.
I think he was like the late 30s or mid 30s to like the early 90s he was selling records. He's one of those dudes that made so many albums.
Right.
He made one of the first concept albums as well, they think.
What does that mean?
Like a cycle of songs that follows the same thematic scheme.
Rather than just like a
Rather than
playlist of
just having a
songs,
whole
it's
lot,
actually
bunch of
a
songs.
cohesive organ. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. So I feel like music though from that era, not that I've listened to much around that time, but how would that be different from anything else that was out at the time? Like what?
His music.
Yeah. No. Or yeah, just anyone.
Everyone
in
making
that
a
genre,
concept
I
album.
suppose. Yeah. What
Well,
was so
it's-
different about it being a concept album from what it was?
Well, I
at the
think
time?
if we're talking about like In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning or one of those albums, it's like 1960. That's like the whole theme is like the first song is about him being like, I miss my woman because this happened. And the end of the thing is like, I'm
So
still
it's context
really
of
sad
the-
and in a bar
yeah.
crying kind of thing.
Because
Like,
I feel like the instrumentals would all be fairly similar.
Yeah.
Like
Oh.
in terms of what you could make.
they're more
production-wise.
downbeat and they're more supposed to invoke,
Right.
they're more like major chords and jazz chords that are supposed to evoke like
Right.
emotion rather
But
than.
it was more the themes of the song that tied
Yeah.
into one
Yeah,
another.
yeah, yeah.
rather than- Okay, yeah.
But he didn't write any of those songs.
yeah,
He just
because
sang them.
a conceptual album to me today, I think of beats that are all very similar. And of course, in that time when there was less tools to work with, you were using more of the same instruments, so you're going to get a similar vibe anyway.
So they use more
Like
instruments
you've
back
got
then.
more sort of things to work with these days. You could get something that actually is quite.
But at the same time, this is Frank Sinatra. So this is a guy who's like the biggest musician in the world. Like he could
Right.
get any instrument he wanted to come out anywhere and he'd have
Sure.
top musicians playing. So if you could, if someone that was around him, like a musical director or he himself was like, oh, I want to have this thematic thing going through the album. I want a bass harmonica and a theorem and yada yada. They'd be like, well, yes, because you're Frank Sinatra.
I guess I'm thinking more towards the computer side of things, like in terms of what you can do with audio these days and software and
But a lot of like really pinnacle concept albums were made made in analog. You know, they weren't made with any digital functions at all.
yeah.
Like Pink Floyd's albums and The Who, like Tommy by The Who and Sgt. Pepper's by the Beatles, Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys. Those albums are all concept albums that they would have they had to cut the tapes. You know, they had to cut the reels physically by their hands with a razor.
Yeah.
So if you cut the wrong part of the tape, you just ruined like months worth of work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. That's it. That makes sense, I suppose. I guess, again, not too familiar with that genre of music and that, I guess, era of music that you are, so I can't really...
Well, that's why Brian Wilson is so like lauded as, or lauded, however you want to say it, as like a musical genius because he's one of the first dudes to use the studio as an instrument.
Right.
The concept is that, you know, before it was all just like, oh, we record all the songs, we lay it all together,
Yeah.
and it's a big wall of sound thing that just comes out of the speakers and car radios, whatever. Whereas he was like, well, this room is specifically built to record music, so why not pretend that the studio itself is an instrument, and then
As in use the dynamics of the room.
yeah,
And
use sound dynamics and
As
use
opposed
techniques,
to-
overdubbing techniques and things like that.
for what was the way to do it before that?
There
People
wa-
would have still had studios.
Yeah, they just did it in the studio, but they didn't think about mixing just techniques like bringing sound effects into the studio or whatever. It was more like they'd go
Sure.
out into the field and record a train passing by or
Yeah,
some
right.
woman screaming in the street or whatever.
Oh,
Whereas he's like, oh, let's bring my dogs in here and get them to bark, or let's bring a horse in here and get it to neigh,
Yeah.
and I'll just change the
I need
acoustics.
to watch that movie again, I think, because I didn't take a lot of it in.
Yeah.
I think I told you when I first watched that movie, I
Talking
thought
about
it
Love
was,
and Mercy.
yeah, I thought it was about the Bee Gees. And I think at the first time I'd watched it, I didn't actually watch it from the start. I think it must have just been on television. They came in halfway through. And so I didn't know that it was based on a real thing. But when I did find that out, I sort of thought, oh, this seems like the Bee Gees. It was a trio of guys.
Brothers.
Although the Beach Boys, there were four.
Three brothers, a cousin and a friend.
Okay. Well, yeah, the brothers thing, because it's the same with the Bee Gees.
Yeah.
I thought that was the other way around. So the whole time I was watching, thinking this was Barry Gibb doing all this stuff. I was like, oh,
Like, where's
sick.
his
Like,
beard? Where's
no
his
wonder
beard?
Liam loves you two so much, but you do love the Beach Boys anyway.
Yeah.
But it was still like, oh, right, okay, that makes a bit more sense.
No,
but
yeah.
oh, well, that's interesting. I need to watch that again, I think, and see how that was actually done.
All the
'cause it's
best
interesting.
harmony
It's pretty game changing.
groups ever are always familial. You know, they're always related to each other because that's the closest DNA that you can get
Yeah.
to another voice, but that still has alterations, you know? Because if you and me practice for the rest of our lives, we could sound similar to each other or sound in a blend. But
Do you think that makes much difference, though? Genetics in
Heck
your
yeah.
vocals?
shit, yeah.
Yeah?
The shape of your diaphragm or just the way that words come out of your throat
That's a DNA based
is
thing.
definitely a DNA thing, 100%.
Interesting.
Because you might meet the right people that have different voices or they have this similar range or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you're genetically coded to be of the same offspring as somebody in close age to you, they're going to be able to mimic you a lot easier as well because they have the same base of
Yeah, sure.
knowledge to grasp from.
Yeah, I suppose that makes sense.
But that's why, because that's why they always say that the actual tightest harmonies with the least gap in between the ranges always comes from people who are related.
Okay. Well, no wonder they did so well then.
Yeah, Beach Boys, Bee Gees, Everly Brothers, tons of musicians back in the day. They still exist now, but they don't focus on harmonies like
You never really see
Family
groups
X,
like that.
Jonas
trios
Brothers,
like those.
maybe
No. Who's that?
the Jonas Brothers.
Oh, the Jonas Brothers. I think you said Jones Brothers. Yeah.
The Jonas Bros.
I know. I can't think of anyone else who's family orientated like that. It's just a very 70s, 80s concept, I think. Were the Beatles related?
No.
They
They're
were
just from the
purely
same
a group.
city.
Yeah, right.
So if you're from the same
They could have
place,
passed as brothers, though.
yeah. Well, if you're from the same place and you have the same accent, that probably helps a lot as well.
Yeah.
And if you have a lot of the same knowledge about how the other dude's voice sounds, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's true.
Some of the dudes in AC/DC were brothers, but I don't like that
I
band.
don't enjoy that band at all.
No.
It's just, it's
Jackson 5, there's a good example.
Yeah,
Or the
these still are
Jacksons.
really old groups, though. Can you think of any
Yeah, for
groups
sure,
from
but-
like the last 5 years, even?
Yeah, for sure. But the music that they made is the music that groups now copy forever, you know?
Yeah, right.
That's why I always find it really weird when people say like disco died in the 70s, where it's like there's so many songs. There's a new song that comes up every 5 years that has the disco pattern or has the disco beat, like
Trying to get it.
moves like Jagger, all of those Bruno Mars songs, Uptown Funk, all of those songs are literally just the disco motif but slightly altered, you know?
Yeah.
Michael Jackson's music.
They're trying to bring it back.
It's never gone away though, that's the thing. Daft Punk's music, a lot of Daft Punk's music you could argue has disco elements in it as well, you know. Pharrell's production has tons of disco elements.
For sure. And those songs do well, but it still doesn't sort of flood the charts with
No.
that sort of thing. You'll
No.
get that one that comes up and I think it just becomes popular because it's recognizable.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily like, oh, we're back in this era. It's like, oh, that sounds like, it's like that new Weekend song.
Yeah.
It just sounds like it's from the 80s. So
From the
people
80s.
go, oh, that's nostalgic.
But that's the thing, those
It's
are the
not like
songs.
all songs are going to become that.
No, but those are the songs that do have big impacts that can become number ones because people that buy records are, an elder person, someone who's in their 40s or 30s or early 50s, they can be like, hey, I remember songs like this by friggin' Duran that sound really similar to The Weeknd,
I think it's so interesting that hip hop is the biggest genre of music in the world at the moment.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
I'll swing away from it eventually.
Oh, of course, as it does.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting. Part of the reason why I enjoyed that kind of music when I first started listening to it, which would have been like start of high school sort of thing, was because it was different. Not purely that. It was like, oh, I want to be different. It was like this is something else that isn't common, and then that used to feel real shitty going to parties, putting on these hip hop songs and not
Everyone's
sort of dissing you. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. And now it's like running into old mates that are playing these kinds of songs that are popular now that I used to listen to like years beforehand is really weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just goes to show how much progress.
I just feel
genre's
like
taken.
R&B music is the most stick-to-itive genre of music of all time because R&B music is the music that Elvis turned into rock and roll, and then that, R&B music is the music that the Beatles were following, just changing it up to have different patterns for a different audience. R&B music is the music that the Bee Gees were following in the 70s to make disco music. R&B music is what rap spawned from, so R&B, and then R&B spawned from blues music. So it's all African American / African beat music, and originally it just gets bastardized down the line, and someone just switches it up. Except for trap music, I don't really think you could say that trap music has a lot of similarities with R&B. Like it does in some artists, like a guy like Party Next Door or something, or certain artists.
Sure.
That are still R&B, hip hop, trap artists. But trap music in its own form is kind of just too far away from R&B, I would say.
Yeah. It's been fused a lot. There's a lot of artists that have brought an R&B element to hip hop.
Yeah.
Like first guy that comes to mind is DaBaby. Like his music
someone like
initially, and not a discography I'm super familiar with, but his music was initially very trappy. And then one of his songs released a couple of months ago was super, like he's trying to sing on it.
Yeah.
And it's like people feel like hip hop artists will just try to go down that road, try and show people that they can sing.
Yeah.
Did you see the Grammys changed the name of the urban category?
Right.
So what was it? Urban contemporary category. They've changed it to progressive R&B category.
See, that's just as bad.
Exactly.
That's literally just as buzzwordy.
It's like, okay, well now we can put a few more artists, a bit more variety into this category, but it's still
They're
going to
have
be an
rap
artist
records
for-
winning a progressive R&B category just
exactly.
because white people don't want to vote for it.
They don't want to take big awards away from big pop artists like your Taylor Swifts and your.
The Grammys is a joke, though. The Grammys has been a joke for
I don't think I've
30
ever watched
years.
it properly. Like any kind of award show, I never really watch because it's not
Big
really
circle jerk.
ever fair. Yeah,
But the Grammys in particular have always been really just like, it's just
not
not.
that impressive.
Nah.
Yeah.
No.
Interesting considering how many black artists, people of colour artists are in the charts these days. Like literally, I went through the Spotify top tracks the other day just to see like what was trending, which I don't know why, I just did. But like you could pull most of the artists that are out of that list to be of
Yeah, for sure.
colour.
Well, I'd say that particularly in the female,
Yeah.
the mainstream, quote unquote, female artists that are popular in the charts or popular with wider audiences are,
Yeah. It'd just be interesting to see the next Grammys, how that category actually gets pursued or looked into now, whether they actually change the context of what that name's going to mean or whether they just rename it so they can keep
giving
putting
it out.
artists under this category and not actually sharing. Because like I say, hip-hop now is like, it's not pop music, but it's like popular
It's in the
music.
popular straight mainstream,
So you've got to put those artists in that category if you're going to have a pop genre. You can't just keep turning people
But
out.
they've always done that in the Grammys in ways that are ridiculous. Like, they always give albums that are but just based on trends because music becomes pop when it becomes popular. But that doesn't mean that the roots of the song are supposed to
As
be
a pop,
popular
yeah.
music. You know, like
Yeah.
you can have artists like it's almost like Dire Straits in the 80s. They're massive mainstream artists for a couple of years in the middle of the 80s. Their music is like R&B, Celtic rock, pub rock, garage rock music, and they win a Grammy for best pop album.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, the roots of this aren't popular music at all. It just happens to be popular because this is its time in the sun, sort of thing.
The whole concept of pop music is pretty odd in that sense. How you can have anything that becomes popular music, but to make a pop song, it almost feels like you head in a certain direction.
Yeah.
But to be categorized, it can just mean that something's popular. So the genre just kind of means what's hot.
It's just a manufactured term by a manufactured industry, though, isn't it?
But you still think of when you hear pop music, you still there's a certain type of song that comes to mind when you hear pop music. But it just seems a bit skewed. I don't know.
Yeah. But that music always morphs over time. Like the music that they were making in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, there was no classic rock radio format at the time. That was the stuff that you'd be hearing on the hits or quote unquote.
Yeah.
So that they don't know that at the time. They're just making the music because that's the trend they're following. And then 20 years later, some guy's like, hey, what if we compile all this music that was popular 20 years ago and we have an infinite amount of resources to just keep pulling from, and this can be 3 or 4 different radio stations all playing the same stuff.
Yeah.
Just call it classic rock.
Yeah. That's why I don't like the radio, because it just seemed
it's just
everyone
redundant.
wants to be playing the songs that people like, which ends up meaning that all these channels are playing the same songs. Not all of them, of course. You have specific channels that play certain things, but most of the time when you're flicking through stuff, you're going to hear the same song played on a couple of different channels, and it's like, fuck, why even bother at this point if I'm just going to hear the same stuff over and over?
But I feel like radios have shifted their format to accept the change that they're not people's first listening option. You know, like they're built like work playlists because they know that the majority of their commercial advertising comes from being played at the speaker at Mitre 10 or in some clothing store you're going into, and they know that that's the only way to keep any commercial prospects for a radio station alive, because how many cars now are built with stereo systems that have AUX or Bluetooth into the system? It's like they're just... Before, even 10 years ago, it was you had the radio and maybe a CD player or a tape cassette, or you had nothing.
There's no reason for me to turn on the radio.
No.
Like there's whatever I can get from the radio, I can get literally anywhere else now.
And they also ruined radio personalities.
Yeah.
They castrated so many radio hosts that you're like, what is this person even talking about? You know, you turn on the hits.
Every time we're in the car, it's like...
It's three people. It's like a woman and a guy and a kind of snarky other person that could be a woman or a guy. Yeah. And it's just this banter about their work staff room or like the coffee that the radio station buys for them. And it's like, this is supposed to be relatable. But if I'm in a workplace and this is on, it's like, I don't want to be reminded about mundane bull crap when you're at work. Like,
I mean, ironically, we were just listening to the radio before, and that topic that came up, the way he introduced that headline about the new case here, how he sort of left the important part of the information at the end, that's really what all radio and that kind of media is based on now. It's just making you listen,
grab you,
stringing it out so that you go, oh, fuck, like there's something I need to be worried about here, and then they sort of reassure you then, but you've stayed and sort of listened for that moment of time. It's like clickbait, in that sort of form. And that's the only thing that keeps people interested in those things, because you go, oh, what's that? Or shit, should I?
And that'll never be recorked either, because now every man and his dog can give you news based on any kind of insight that has no bearing on anything.
And people that aren't familiar with that format of clickbait, or reeling in, like older folks say, are just going to click that without knowing, and you're still going to have some sort of audience that's going to be sort of eating away at this media, this sort of information, because they don't know what they're being led into. Yeah. I was looking at getting an audio book the other day, because I've been listening to lots of podcasts, and I've got lots of book recommendations at the moment, and I was quite surprised to find out that it costs like $30-$40 to get an audio reading of a book, like the same price that you would get one at the stationery shop. I thought that was ridiculous, because you're not getting a physical copy of anything. You're just listening to someone tell a story, which of course, that I'd pay the price for that, but it's still like,
But who was
this
it
makes
narrated
no
by?
sense. Well, it varies. This one I was looking at was the Flea.
Was it narrated by Flea himself?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's the
They've got to
markup
pay
that they
him
can say
to
is
put
that,
into it. Yeah.
yeah, you know, there's no tangible cost for them because they're not printing a book, they're not going through a publisher, but they can say on the sales market or whatever, just be like, well, this is narrated by Flea. You're getting personally spoken to by.
It's a justification for
Flea.
not having the physical book.
Yeah.
You get the authors reading it to you. I suppose that's fair enough.
But that's also, I'd still agree. I think you get a lot more interest if, you know, they had it priced cheaper. It's like Kindles. I feel like I'd read a lot more. I've always wanted a Kindle, and I know lots of family members have Kindles, and I always wanted to be like, well, I'd probably read way more if I had a Kindle.
It'd be neat.
And because the books are cheaper too. They're only like $9. Some of them are $0. Some of them are free, you know.
See, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was the first, the Kindle, like a Kindle and an audiobook are pretty different though.
The only thing I don't like about getting a Kindle, the concept of having a Kindle, is that I'd much rather have like a bookshelf of books than I would have a tablet full of books, just for the like physical aspect of having a collection of something, you know. But of course, for the accessibility, a Kindle would be much better. But I feel this. I've got so many books on my bookshelf that I want to read, but I just know I'm never going to read them because I just too busy. It sounds really ignorant, but I'm just too busy. I don't have like an hour to spare to sit down and read a book, or if I do, I'm so fidgety.
That's why I do it at night time if I'm going to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Because then
that's
if
probably
I
the only
want
time
to
that
stop,
I do
can
do
just
it.
sleep.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Have you seen the new PS5?
Yeah.
Freaking spaceship looking thing.
But
I reckon it's dope.
Yeah, I've not, like, it is peculiar
Not that
looking.
you're
and
a
all.
PS.
Oh, I'd definitely get a PS5 over another Xbox player.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You're sick of the Xbox Live? Or you just like the look of the new ones as opposed to what you've got?
I just think that I was leaning toward, like, if I hadn't already got an Xbox One, I probably got a PS4. I grew up with PSs, you know. I had a PS1.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had a PS1 and a PS2.
Oh, shit.
And then I switched to an Xbox 360 after that because...
Halo and stuff.
Yeah, and also because Ethan and Nathan...
True.
All those guys had Xboxes.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to play with my mates. I'm still like that with gaming. Like I lost the will to like pursue individual gaming quite early into my teens. Like I still do it sometimes on a computer. Like I play real time strategy games and stuff. Just when I'm bored or it's weather shit or I'm sick or whatever.
Yeah.
But I lost
Come aboard.
Yeah.
Come aboard to the PS5.
Yeah.
I mean,
Tempted.
PlayStation.
It's just the cost. And it's also just that
it's going to be fucking expensive.
I don't know what,
think.
you know, you don't know what the next few years entail.
The sucky thing about the
I spend all my money on instruments too.
What?
I spend all my money on instruments too.
Yeah, true. Well, I mean, it's probably a worthwhile investment. I'm not a huge gamer, but to have a PS5 would be pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What was I going to say?
They keep re-releasing GTA 5 as the like flagship.
Yeah, right. It's like, come on.
Yeah, it's like pretty ridiculous. 3 separate generations of consoles that game is going to be out on.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty big franchise. Like any
it is
kind of
massive.
GTA that's going to come out is going to do well. You'd think
I don't know if this can be an unpopular opinion, but it's kind of one of the worst GTAs.
GTA 5?
Yeah.
I'm no GTA player, but I mean, to me, I'm the kind
decent,
of guy who'd much rather play a modern, better looking game. Even if it's a shittier game, I'd still rather play that than play like an old, like I learned that the hard way. I bought all these old consoles. I bought like a Nintendo GameCube and all these other consoles. Like, oh, this is sick. This is like vintage tech. These look cool. I had these as a kid. And you start playing the games, you go, right.
See the flaws.
You literally, there's an immense amount of flaws, especially games from like the early 90s. It's like, these are fun to a point, but then you just, I've had my GameCube consoles that I bought for like 2 years now, and I think I've played Super Smash Brothers like once or twice, because it was like, well,
it's done.
It's fun, but that's not immersive like a game is today. And same with like movies and things as well. Like a lot of the time, I much rather watch a newer movie.
I think newer movies have less immersive ability than old ones, personally.
Yeah.
I just think that the actual, I think that scenery chewing aspect of acting nowadays has just gone way over the top. Where
What do you mean by that?
Where one actor is just, whether they're directed that way or the way that acting is taught or learned or whatever, they just, the movie's about them. I just feel like in most movies that I'm watching, like I feel like acting has reached a point where inspirations or the actors nowadays have grown up watching, they're just trying to be them, or they're just trying to be somebody else. And
Yeah.
there's a few of them that can pull it off that are fine, that I can still watch in roles for sure. Like I'm not being a complete snob. And I like watching movies with unknown actors and being like, oh, there goes a good actor, whatever. But there was something about the older style of filming where people had acted a lot before they had made movies, you know?
Yeah,
now you
sure.
can get somebody who doesn't act on stage or they don't act in other things and they're just straight into the movies.
Yeah, right.
Because I feel like older movies you're watching, you're like, this guy is pulling from his bag of tools to play this character because he's had to act his whole life. You know?
I think that comes with like this generation wanting to capitalize off
And
these
be
things that
famous.
think are so accessible and become famous. So there's more people that are just in it for the sake of being in it rather than getting actually, asked to come and act because they had talent. It's
Or
people
have gone
that
to
are
an
looking down
acting
their
school
own-
where
yeah.
they were actually forced to be versatile
Yeah.
rather than. I don't know. I just think the amount of crap that comes out now is just at a point where I'm just not interested.
Yeah.
I'd rather just check into the massive archive of movies that have already been made with
sure.
more original ideas.
sure.
Like if I see another movie about The Rock playing some dude, I'm just like, this is sad that this is what's being exposed to children. Like, they're not being given the option to have all kinds of different genres. There's no good sci-fi movies anymore, you know? Like, every sci-fi movie they make now is no longer, it can't be a sci-fi. It's always going to be a sci-fi horror or a sci-fi thriller. There's always going to be some bullshit M. Night Shyamalan style twist in it. It's like, how about you just create a world and let the audience immerse themselves in that, and that's the experience, you know? Like a Blade Runner kind of movie or a Aliens or those kind of movies, you know?
Yeah.
Not some movie where you're just like, it's called Arrival. That movie with Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt, where they're the only two people that are alive.
Yeah, I haven't watched it, but I've seen that.
Man, that movie could have been so good, and it sucked. You know, it's just like, it's like they get these good concepts and then they just torpedo themselves and like, we don't know where to take it from here. All we need is the draw card of this unique concept, and then once people have given us their money, they can go fuck themselves.
Pretty much.
That's what they think in the movie theaters now.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm a sci-fi guy. Those kind of movies never really appeal to me that much. But I'm definitely the type to judge things by their cover, so to speak.
I just meant sci-fi as an example because sci-fi is a genre that seems to be, or seemed to be, ageless. You know,
Right.
like you get a movie like Space Odyssey 2001 or those, even in the 50s, there was tons of sci-fi movies. But then you could have like Star Wars in the 70s and Blade Runner in the 80s and Independence Day in the 90s.
Yeah.
And those movies, like, they always have relevance of some kind because humans have never actually pushed through into space. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of sci-fi concepts to be explored because they
You
become
can't
more
really-
relevant the further human development comes on. You know?
Yeah, and,
Whereas
it's the freedom to create a realm of your own because
it's not
you
tied
don't
to
know
Earth.
what's for sure out there. So you can just make anything and it's somewhat believable. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like there's no inspiration for new movies.
No.
Like I feel like the last couple of years, the majority of big movies that come out have been part of like a sequence, like your Marvel movies and just sequels to other movies, or like all the Disney movies remaking all of the old animated ones. It's like, did that really need to be done? Like you couldn't think of anything else to do?
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's just no more ideas left.
The sad thing is, like, back in the day, those movies that came from like individual creators and became like breakout hits, there was a lot of them sprinkled in a movie year, you know, like, and because they used to roll the dice. The studios used to roll the dice. Whereas now, because of Hollywood accountancy, like, I was reading about my dad. I went home and my dad was reading about on the computer when I was coming through the Justice League movie, right? And I've never seen it. I don't really I've seen some of the Marvel movies, but I'm not
Justice
an
League
avid
movie.
fan.
When did that come out?
Well, the Justice League's like a DC movie. I think in 2018, maybe.
What?
Yeah, and it's one of the most expensive films ever made. I never saw it. I don't even really remember it being promoted. It's one of the most expensive films ever made, right? It made $650 million or something like that,
Yeah.
or $600 million or something, a massive amount of money.
How have I not heard about this?
And the reason it didn't get a sequel is because to break even under Hollywood accountancy, they had to make $750 million.
Jesus
So the budget was only
Christ.
$350 million, but they said if we don't make $750 million, we're not making another one. You know, so that's the kind of thing. Is that commerce has just taken over an art, and that art used to be the cinema. You know,
How came out 2017.
yeah.
How have I not heard about this?
Yeah.
It's
It's got a lot of actors in it.
I was going to say, do they have like
The actors from the
actors
other
from
movies.
yeah. So like, what's his name?
Henry Cavill and stuff.
The guy that plays Batman. What's his name?
Ben Affleck or Christian Bale.
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale hasn't played Batman since The Dark Knight Rises. It was 2010.
Oh, so who
It's been
was?
Ben Affleck since then.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Who was the Batman in the Justice League movie? Ben Affleck?
I think so.
If you're going to cast.
Cast. Where are we? Ben Affleck. Okay, I suppose that makes sense.
Who else was
I
in
was thinking of what's the guy that plays Deadpool? Ryan Reynolds. I was thinking of him when you said that, and I was like, what? Why would he be? Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like this. Or how did they not do well? Like,
No,
is it just not done?
if you read the first entry at the start of the page, I'm pretty sure it says that the movie cost them $350 or $400 million and was one of the most expensive films ever. And because it needed $750 million to break even, which that's the thing, man. You know, it cost them $300 million to make, but the accountancy that goes on with the producers, they say, no, this is actually going to cost us $750 million. And if we don't make this much in profit, we're not interested in making another movie.
Fair enough.
But no, it's not really fair enough, though. If you're not being a smash success in Hollywood now, if you're not a franchise or a sequel or something that just destroys for them, they're not interested in hearing the concept.
Yeah,
you know?
okay.
And that's a movie that I bet you they thought, they're like, this is pre-made. You know, this is based on a Justice League comic book and all the canon before this. There's no way this can fail.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's no real build-up to this, is there? Apart from the Batman movies?
Batman versus Superman was the one before it, I think.
Okay. I haven't caught up with any of the DC
I don't watch
movies.
I don't watch them. I just know about them through marketing or advertising or whatever. Or my dad loves them.
Yeah, right. Oh, funny. I can't find the information about
There's a lot of movies like
crazy.
that.
Yeah.
There was a movie that Disney...
what's it called? The Endgame. That was a huge...
Oh, yeah, that's got to be one of the biggest grossing movies of all time. It's got to be.
Endgame budget, I guess.
But they're not profitable.
Well, that's not even as much as the Justice League one. The budget was 350 mil.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that made way more than that.
But that's the thing is that...
2.7 billion.
Must be like second or third highest grossing movie of all time then.
That's
or is it the
insane.
highest grossing?
Highest grossing movie of all
Nah,
time.
it probably doesn't beat Gone with the Wind with inflation, eh?
What's that? I've never heard
Gone
of
with
that.
the Wind came out in
Oh, yeah,
1939.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Holy crap. I've never
The
heard
sequel
of
was called Gone with the Wind with inflation.
that. Oh, Avatar and Titanic and Star
Is
Wars.
Gone with the Wind up there?
Yeah, it's number one.
Yeah. How much does it save with inflation? It's like 4.9 billion or something.
This is where I need tech guy to come in because I fucking don't know how to search for this sort of shit.
Tech guy.
That's fucking... It's crazy how...
Gone with the Wind sucks, bro.
It's such an old movie. How does
Such a boring film.
Why is it...
It's so long. It's like 4 hours long, bro.
Holy cow. Why is it done so well?
Oh, it's just one of those movies that
It's just those
just
classic-
the time it came out.
Yeah.
Everybody's mum and dad had that on, like my parents had it on VHS. It was on like 3 different tapes. It was that long, bro.
With a worldwide box office gross of over 2.7 billion, Avengers Endgame was proclaimed to be the highest grossing film, but such claims usually refer to theatrical revenues and do not take account to home video television income. So that's probably why that did so well, because there was more of that. But in 1939,
Probably
you wouldn't have been able to go and buy a copy of that.
No,
You would have had
but
to go to the
it would have
cinema.
been released every 5 to 10 years after that.
And just
They would-
as the
in
tech
1949, they would have made it 1959
Right.
with just tiny, tiny little changes to it.
Jesus.
But it's
That's crazy.
such a boring movie, bro. It's so boring.
Any
and the
movie
romance
that's
in
4
it,
hours
like I like old romance movies. Like I quite enjoy them. And they can be quite romantic.
Yeah.
But this one sucks. This one is not a romantic movie at all.
No, you're not
And
selling it to me at all.
Well, dude,
Like,
there's no way that they would re-release this movie in this day and age because it is really, really off pitch, bro. It's about slavery. It's about the Civil War.
Oh, really?
It just doesn't fly today, I don't think.
Jeez. Oh dear. That's so interesting. But yeah, with the Justice League movie, I'm going to have to go watch that now, see what it's about. Have you watched it?
No. My dad was telling me about it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And reading up about it.
Well, I mean, the fact that I've just finished watching all of the Marvel movies. I've been in that universe for
Justice
a
League's
while
a
now.
DC.
I know. I'm just saying I'm in that context of comic-related stories that I feel like I would have heard about this movie, but obviously not.
That's the thing is they're rivals. You know, they bombard the others, and those Marvel movies just happen to have supremacy.
Yeah.
So that's the movies that you're going to hear about most of the time. You know?
Do you think I look thinner
Thinner,
in the face?
a little bit.
Yeah, I've had people say that to me recently. I went out for dinner with my auntie, and when she was in town the other weekend, she said, "Oh, you look thin." I thought, oh. Right.
Facial structure changes as you get older, though, especially around 25.
Yeah. I'm like, well, I haven't lost weight. I haven't any weight to lose. I don't know whether to be thankful or be worried when someone says it to me. I'm like, thanks. But
Yeah, I think like she probably means it as a compliment.
Yeah, for sure.
It's come from an older lady.
But it's kind of like, if you think I'm thinner,
Yeah.
not that she would have thought I was overweight or anything, but it's like,
I don't know.
it's
I've
an
never.
interesting comment to make to someone.
I just never had to deal in my adult life. I've never had people have been concerned that I'm thin.
Yeah.
Like people, I've never had
Yeah.
someone to be like, "Hey, you
Yeah.
look good thin."
Especially
My
from
mum or
grandparents.
yeah,
and
my mum
things,
or my
yeah.
family's like, "Why do you not have more
Yeah.
weight on your body?" I'm like, "Oh, it just
fuck,
doesn't
like-
happen for me." Like, if you saw the
Literally.
crap I was eating,
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky with my metabolism. There's been points in my life where I have had terrible diet and haven't put on an ounce of weight.
yeah.
Like it just doesn't happen for me.
Yeah, my grandmother used to be shocked, She just like, when we were out at this dinner, she like turned to my dad. She's like, "How's that boy of yours not putting on any weight? All he does is eat crap.
You're feeding him.
All he does is eat crap. That boy of yours not put on any weight."
Yeah. Oh dear. So
Yeah.
annoying having to deal with grandparents. Did I tell you that?
I don't have to anymore.
Yeah. Oh,
They're all dead.
right. Got real grim.
They are though.
When did your last grandparent pass away?
Like 2010.
Oh wow. Okay.
Mate, the last grandparent that I met my dad's mum twice. I think she died in 2010 or 2011. My dad's dad died in 2004, and my mum's dad died in 2007.
Wow. Okay. So
And
you
my
were fairly
mum's-
young when that sort of thing happened. Yeah.
The only one that I can remember when my dad's dad died, and I can remember when my mum's dad died, and I can remember them all. And
Yeah.
I did meet them. I had a good relationship with my mum's dad,
That's good.
but my mum's mum died in the 80s. My mum's mum died at
Right.
about 50
Okay.
or a little bit younger.
Do you remember being like super emotional towards any individual, or like just for example, when my nana passed, that was not that long. My nana was, I think, my first grandparent to pass. Might have been my pop, but that was still only like 2016, so I
Yeah.
was 20, and I just like I wasn't super close with her, but
Yeah.
it was still like I felt nothing at all.
Yeah.
Like I got the call. I think I was in Australia at the time, and I got the call. Nana's passed away, and I sort of thought, oh, nothing happened.
Well,
Even
if it's
at the
natural,
funeral.
if it's just the path of life, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess my uncle was probably the one that was most emotionally affected, but that's because he was only about 60,
Right.
and he was like
Well,
a lot more.
uncle's a bit different, just because I guess
I was just closer with him than I was
Yeah.
with any other of my family
Yeah,
members.
for
Like
sure.
we had some interest in like music, and he liked
Yeah.
just
But do you think with grandparents in particular, though, like I feel like if touch wood, one of my parents had passed away, I'd be devastated,
Yeah.
of course. But with Nana, it was like, it's kind of like you're expecting it to happen.
Yeah,
Like, it's
because they're a
inevitable.
grandparent.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's just me, or if it's just because it's going to happen, or whether it's just because your grandparents, you're not that super close to them.
Yeah.
I just thought it was bizarre not to have any sort of reaction at all. I felt nothing whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, it was a sad time, of course, but I was not like,
yeah. Well, I've had that with like friends or whatever, where their great grandparent dies or their grandparent, and I'm not unemotional for them. I'm not unempathetic, but I find I certainly can't relate to somebody's grandparent, like somebody's great grandparent dying,
yeah.
and then them feeling really torn up about it. Like, I'm not
so-
saying that it's invalid. They're not allowed to, because they are, but
how
they come to me and be like, "Man, I just came back from my great grandmother's funeral." I'm like, "Oh yeah, how old is she?" She's like, 98. I was like, "Well, bruh, like that sucks." That sucks
We
that
didn't
she
see
passed
that
away,
coming.
bro. But like, picture yourself at 98 scuttling around. Would you really want that?
How many people do you know that would still have like a great grandparent?
Some people do, man.
That's crazy. My great, my dad's nana, so my great grandma. I think she passed away like when I was 1 or 2. So
Yeah.
needed to meet her.
Well,
There's a huge generational gap.
there's a kid that used to coach basketball, and his dad was 18, and his dad was 36, and his grandfather was 56, and his great grandfather was 76 and still
Wow.
alive. And I was like to him, bro, like, because I was like, bro, my dad's like 67. My dad's the age of your granddad, and your great granddad is still alive. Like,
That's crazy.
yeah. But that's
man.
that's cutting it so close, though.
Yeah. Because how old they would have been having these
18.
kids? Yeah.
I think they had him in high school or
That's
like just after high
insane.
school.
I can't. I wonder if that was by choice or whether, like, I think just people at that age
Just
or
get
that
married when that
time
happens.
period. Yeah, just my auntie was married when she was 19, and that to me is like, holy cow! Like that for me, that would be like 5 years ago being married. It's like,
Yeah, my dad was married at 19. He had 2 kids by the time he was 21.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. I can't fathom that.
Yeah.
I'm not even close to thinking about that, if at all.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a foreign concept to me.
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating.
Flag that.
There would have been a lot more pressure. Imagine, you know, how stubborn your grandparents are. They would have been to some point. Imagine their parents and their parents.
Oh, yeah.
Like growing up, you'd be expecting to get married as soon as it was legally possible.
Yeah, yeah. Or
That's just-
if not before in a lot of cases.
That's just crazy. And I think that was a time where families probably all that really mattered.
Yeah,
You
it's a
work and you get
security
money.
thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you have
sure.
people around you. Like, you don't have access to all the things that we have these days. There's no
Well,
real need to.
the mindset back then as well with a female was like, I have a daughter. As soon as she is able to be somebody else's legal responsibility and I get something out of it,
Yeah.
I am giving her away to this person. Like, you know? Because
Yeah,
a male
fair
to a
enough.
lot of people in their eyes is like, well, this is a son that can provide this or that or whatever, or have some sort of social standing.
Yeah.
But because women were treated so poorly, they're just like, well, my daughter's going to get treated poorly unless I flog her off to
Yeah,
somebody
right.
else and they can deal with her inequality, you know? Like,
Sad, man.
tis.
Oh, dear.
So when's my arranged marriage?
Yeah.
Who are we getting me arranged? So
Our
when's
arranged girlfriends.
Eva
Where are they
Mendes?
coming
Eva
up?
Mendes is coming through this door real soon, right?
There's this guy at my work, and he was having a laugh to me the other day because he's about, he'd be pushing retirement age, I think, and he's been single as long as I've
Is this
worked
the one that
there.
takes trips to?
No. we won't go there. But he was saying how he's just recently got a new girlfriend, and he'd mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. He sort of said, "Oh, me and my partner would sort of would gone on an outing or something." I think I'd been asking him what he was doing over lockdown, sort of thing, and then I sort of thought, partner? I didn't realise he had a partner. And then the next time I spoke to him, he said, "Oh yeah, no, I've got a new girlfriend. I knew her from Nelson or something. She's been down." Oh, good on you, man. That's awesome. And then
Yeah.
he goes, "I never realised like how much fun it is to be in a relationship." I'm like, yeah, cool. Like that's good for you, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then he goes, "You should try it. Like you should try out a relationship." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, do you want? Well, I'll just pluck a girl friend out of thin air, shall I?"
You got any friends from Nelson?
Yeah, it's just like, okay, that just doesn't happen like that for some people. I mean, you happen into it. You can't expect that to just happen for me. I
Some
just
people
thought it was
do
funny.
pursue it doggedly, though.
For sure. And I think it's pretty easy to start a relationship if you really wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there are people out there, it's just, yeah.
Way forced.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think our generation is a bit different in that aspect where it's prolonged. It's it's not a necessity to start that, or it's easy to not get close with people because you can have social media in the middle of it all.
Yeah.
So you could talk to someone so
Sure.
briefly but so consistently and not really ever like meet this person
Yeah, I wonder if
and not get that close to them. So it's easy to like push away.
I wonder if like cheating is more common nowadays, or if it's just that the access to the ability to use things that aid you in cheating is way more prevalent. Like, are people still because people have always cheated on each other. Adulteries have been a thing since way back in the literally in the Bible. So I wonder if
you think if you were a cheater, you wouldn't be cheating these days. Like if there was any time period to not cheat on someone, it would be these days. I feel.
You think that?
Yeah.
Why?
Because just social media and the way that you can find out things about people now, it's just a lot more accessible.
But people, somebody who's
you think
willing
it's
to
a moral thing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Right. You don't think cheating's a morality issue?
No, I mean as in how it's perceived today. Like it's more. You're saying it's more common.
Oh yeah,
these days.
And I think that the ability to move aside from it in your social standing is probably actually easier today than it was before.
Right.
Because if you're in a small area and someone's like, well, there goes Miss Jones. She was bloody flogging the milkman while Mr. Jones was away. You know, then you're done for. You got to leave that area. Whereas now it's like, oh, you know, they had a breakup.
Yeah.
But cheating here and there, I heard. And then
how
they just
you're
meet
cheating.
a ton of other people. You know?
Yeah, right. I think if it was years and years, decades ago and you were cheating, it's purely like if you're finding that thing out, you've slipped up somewhere. You can go out and meet someone somewhere, but if you get caught, you've been slipping somewhere. Someone's discovered something you've been up to, or you've not come home at a certain time or whatever. Whereas these days, it depends how you're cheating. Like if you're messaging someone, it's not easy, but it's possible to access those messages and find those things out.
Sure.
That's why I'm saying, like, if you're going to cheat, you shouldn't do it now, because if you're making arrangements with people,
for sure,
the
that's what I mean. Is like you're not wrong. You shouldn't cheat now because it's probably the easiest that you could get caught.
Yeah.
But people who are cheating don't care.
Right.
That's why I think people are cheating. If getting caught was an issue, you wouldn't do it in the first place. Right. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
So if you're willing to be cheating on somebody and run the risk of being caught, that's because you have an issue with the morality of cheating or whatever. You know, it's not.
Why do you think that's different today than decades ago?
Because I think it was a lot more. It's way more impactful on your standing or your ability to support yourself or whatever. Whereas now it's way more prevalent. Like I think there'd be a lot more people who are open about the fact that relationships have failed because of their indiscretion or whatever. Whereas back in the day, it was like a mark of shame. Whereas now it's like, well, now I can just go on Tinder and meet a whole bunch of other people who are single because either A, they cheated on other people, or they haven't met somebody, or they just want to bang or whatever.
Sure.
You know, like.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I suppose to our point earlier that people back in those days are probably married a lot younger. Like they won't be dating.
They don't know what it's like to not be married.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So cheating is a whole nother thing, whereas cheating nowadays is usually just on someone that you're in a relationship with, which can be years, for years on end, you know. Yeah, interesting. I think it's terrible. I think it's a terrible thing to do.
It is. Yeah. It's not great.
But, I mean, that's why I don't like marriage, the concept of marriage. Not so that you can cheat on people, but just the to lock yourself down to one person.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain.
Put
I think there's something
Early
ingrained
marriage.
in us to not be with a single person for a lifetime. Like that just doesn't seem natural. I believe in the concept of meeting someone and having a loving, long-lasting relationship, but I think, deep within us, there's something that's not meant to be. You're meant to okay. You look at it from an animal's perspective. The only thing that these animals, they aren't in a relationship. They're just
monogamous
mating
animals.
Yeah,
Pigeons.
but typically you're just mating. Like if it's mating season for whatever species it's going to be, they're literally just meeting up to reproduce and go on. There's no like, oh well, you're the mother of these children.
That's the thing.
We should hang out.
I think that's a generational thing.
Right.
I think that sex has actually become way more taboo now than it was before. Like obviously you can have it in public or in public forums or whatever, like people do now. Like people are actually a lot more open in speaking about sexual experiences or whatever. Right. But the actual act of having sex with people still has this value placed on it above our own position as organisms. You know, like before it was kind of like you're mating because it's a biological imperative. You're getting messages from your brain that you're in your prime and you should be having children, etc., or you're just having sex with people because you enjoy having consensual sex, like in the 1960s or whatever, right? That still exists now, but I feel like people are actually a lot more cautious about it now, which is fair. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like the idea of there's even been studies that I saw one yesterday that came out that people our age having less sex.
Right.
That's because the stresses of the world are way more. They're constantly blasted at you, and also
And
some people just don't like having sex.
The amount of sexual disease that there is these days can be
For sure, but I don't know if that's
70s.
really what stops people from having sex.
Do you think?
I think it does to a point. Like, it stops you from having sex with somebody you don't know.
Yeah.
But if you're seeing somebody for X amount of time, whatever, some people just don't have a sexual drive. They just don't have a high sexual drive.
Right.
You know? And I think that just gets impacted and impounded by stress factors or pressure from society to not be dominated by sex. You know, it's almost like a pendulum that swung so much to the other side, you know, where people have been taught that sexual behavior is something that you don't have to think about or you shouldn't be pursuing.
Right.
But personally, for me, it's like anything. If you feel like pursuing it, I don't think there should be any shame in pursuing it. You know, like I'd never go to somebody who said that they like to have sex as a hobby and be like, that's fucked. That's stupid. Right. I'd just be like, well, you do you. If you find enough people that are consenting with you and you don't have a problem with it, then that's fine. Whereas some people think differently about other people based on the amount of sex they have, which is weird to me.
It is odd. But yeah, it's something, again, that's been sort of ingrained from older generations too. You know,
to be shameful.
Yeah. It's very common that a lot more people these days are much more sexually open. But yeah.
More sexually open, but not necessarily more sexually experienced. That's what I would say.
For sure. Yeah.
And sexual...
There's more of a world of sex to explore through the internet.
But it seems to be more vapid because of the internet, you know, like it's boiled down to its simplest scenario and through the internet in a lot of those scenarios, you know.
Yeah.
You meet with some girl on Tinder, she's like, well, this guy's on Tinder because he's single. Yeah. Single people want to meet the bone, you know. But it's like, it doesn't have to be that, depending on who you meet from time to time, whatever. But there'll be certain people, like you go on Tinder or a dating app or something, half of them will say things like, you know, not looking for anything serious.
Sure.
Or not looking for a fuck boy, looking for a boyfriend, looking for a partner, see where this rolls kind of thing. Yeah. It's just, there's very rare people that are actually commenting and being like, I will have sex with the person I want to have sex with in the right scenarios.
Yeah. Engaging in sex is just it's a weird thing. And doing it that way is odd as well, because you don't know what you're getting into. I don't like Tinder for that reason. No. You don't know what it is that this person is wanting. Like, you
have to be very willing to be open to those factors, or else you're going to get yourself in a shitload of trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, it's not for me.
But that doesn't mean to say. Yeah, I agree. I'm not a huge proponent of Tinder at all. But that doesn't mean to say it doesn't have its positives for certain people.
Oh, for sure. I've had tons of people that have met on Tinder.
I just think there's other factors that have come into play that make. You have to think of a lot of different things when it comes to sex now. You know, you just have to think of a lot of different things. Like,
what do you mean?
Are you going to be filmed? Is this person going to tell other people about this? Are they going to use this as blackmail or revenge against me in the future? Is this going to be somehow, is what we're sending to each other in these messages going to be misconstrued or taken out of context? If I start talking sexually to this person, am I going to be painted as a sexual predator, yada, yada, yada? Not saying you're guilty of any of those things or that anybody does those or whatever, but context.
But there is, and that's why you
because context doesn't matter. It can just be, it can be cut and pasted onto anything. You know? That's the last thing you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Liam. I think we'll wrap it up there, eh? Thanks for coming along. Thanks for helping me out. And,
what?
What?
When am I getting paid? No.
Cash at the door, mate.
All right.
Cool. All right, let's wrap it up.
Yep.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me on.
Bye-bye.